It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July. We didn't skip a beat here. We had a 4th of July special episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that, kind of straying away from your typical content. It was a lot of fun to do. I enjoyed doing it. If nobody else enjoyed watching it, I at least got the pleasure of doing the episode. Alan, how was your 4th?
Pretty low-key, but good. Yeah, still got all the fingers and toes, which is really what you want coming out of the 4th. That's the main goal.
So you didn't have DeMonte Casey over, just him to do the fireworks?
No, DeMonte Casey was not over doing fireworks.
Okay, good to hear. I hope everybody enjoyed. I did talk to Pat, loved it, by the way. It took him forever yesterday to finally see the thumbnail. But finally, once he saw it, he was cracking up. He asked what spot I gave him, was kind of upset about that. We had a whole conversation about how he could have done more than just be the guy to bring the ice and napkins. But he enjoyed the thumbnail at the very least.
All right. I wonder if
you have to get like his.
I wonder if he agrees with my Connor Hayward pick, because
I'll ask him specifically about that one.
I feel like that was one of my better choices. Your Braden Fehoko pick, I think,
and that came to. I don't know if you saw yesterday, but he was on the drill again.
He was grilling. Yeah.
So I really liked how that one just immediately came to fruition in that manner. If you guys didn't check out that episode, still really fun to go back and watch that. But Alan, a few topics to talk about today before we get into a question, of course, from YouTube, our guy Hayden Bishop, who once again, I mentioned this last time we had a question from him. He's trying to go head to head with Thomas Brocious. He hears how much we talk about him and he's like, what do I got to do to be put on that same pedestal? So he's coming for the throne, Thomas. But first and foremost, I saw you put this out there today. I hadn't seen it prior, but betting odds show that the Steelers are more likely to add a defensive back in the form of Xavien Howard, Stephon Gilmore, Justin Simmons than they are like Michael Thomas, which if you look at the holes on the roster, seems quite confusing on the surface, at least to me.
Yeah, right. It doesn't make any sense. They need a wide receiver a heck of a lot more than they need a defensive back. They filled their big holes through free agency and a trade. They brought in Dante Jackson. They brought in Deshaun Elliott. Both of those guys are making like more money than you would want to pay a backup. Like, no, they send Cam Sutton, and maybe you would be concerned about Cam Sutton being suspended, but none of the guys we talked about are slot corners. They're all either outside guys or Justin Simmons is a safety. So I don't really understand why like those guys in particular would be like what the Steelers would be looking for. I can understand some skepticism about them signing Michael Thomas at this point, just because like they've been staring at that free agent board that hasn't moved in 3 months and they haven't made a move yet. So, like what's changed that they're going to suddenly decide they want Michael Thomas tomorrow? I can understand being skeptical of that move being made, but I don't understand why anyone would think they're more likely to be signing a corner or a safety than a wide receiver right now, no matter who the players are. Like, just give me any wide receiver over any defensive back. What do you make of this?
The one that I will kind of make a case for, Justin Simmons, because he has played some slot corner. I think he could, like, you wouldn't want him to do that. But also Deshaun Elliott's ability to play in the slot. But to me, that would mean like they're cutting bait with DeMonte KZ if they were to make that move. Like, it's not something that I would do, that I would predict the Steelers to do, but I could see kind of a path towards that being the case. But you're right. Like, unless they're projecting it, it sure as hell does not sounded like that's the case, Dante Jackson to play in the slot. Like, doesn't make sense, especially for Xavien Howard or Stephon Gilmore. So I don't understand this whatsoever.
I mean, Dante Jackson's a really fast corner. He's a little bit smaller. Like, you could see the idea there, but they didn't have him do any of it this whole spring. So, like, it certainly doesn't seem like that's what the Steelers are planning on doing. No question that Justin Simmons is better than DeMonte KZ, and that Xavien Howard and Stephon Gilmore are better outside corners than Dante Jackson and everybody else on the roster probably. But like here's my big thing. It's like, yeah, the Steelers have some cap space. They've got $16 million in offseason cap space right now. But as we've talked about before, you basically eat all that up between now and the start of the season doing stuff you got to do. You got to sign a practice squad. That's about $4 million. You got to add the last 2 spots on the roster. They only count 51 salaries in the offseason. You got to pay 53. That's another almost $2 million. You got to pay for anybody that ends up on the injured reserve list, to start the season. Those don't count for the 53-man roster. They're still counting against the salary cap. And then the Steelers like to have some kind of buffer to go into the season with, some kind of, $8 million to $10 million range buffer where they want to be able to make a move-in season. And furthermore, anything at that point you don't spend carries over into the following season. So they have $16 million. They're going to use, what I say, 4 to 10, like 14 of that between now and the start of the season. Now they can make plenty more. A Cam Hayward extension probably makes them a lot of money. They can renegotiate the contracts of T.J. Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick. They can almost make as much money as they want. I mean, they could add another $30 million or so in payroll. I guess I wonder, does it make any sense to do that right now? Like, let's say Xavien Howard could be had for $7 million, which I don't think is a lot of money for the player he is. Is that a move that makes any sense for the Steelers to do, even if they can't? If they just get to the start and say, okay, no, there's no wide receiver trade out there. Should they? Even then, would that be I don't think that's a smart use of their money.
Yeah, and for me, I haven't really thought about the amount of cap space as much as the timing of things. When they did the Highsmith thing, I was like, why are they doing this right now if they don't have to? Why, if there wasn't a move on the horizon, why are they kicking money down the road in that fashion? With the money that they have right now, I mean, yeah, you're right. I don't know that there's a receiver that's going to pop up, especially in the free agent market, that I'm like, yeah, let's go throw money at this guy. We'll see if a trade that comes to fruition that could certainly add salary if they do that in that capacity as well. I wouldn't just be adding a player just because you have the cap space to do so. Certainly. I mean, there are certainly those guys that you mentioned, even for depth purposes. Yeah. If it's a lot less than what we think that the player is worth, Stephon Gilmore, still to me worth $7 million per season. But is that, with what's on the roster right now, the best use of those funds?
Yeah. I don't know. I'd just rather hold on to them at that point. The other part is, if you're Stephon Gilmore, why do you sign in Pittsburgh for that money when you could just wait, see somebody who has a need, the first cornerback to tear an ACL, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a bit strange that I don't, betting markets have different, it's not like a pure percentage odds, right? They have trends. They have a market they need to find, and they have trends they have to follow, and it's not about what they think is most likely. It's about what they think is going to be bet on and not bet on. And those are two different things. But this is a bit strange to me that that's where we are. I mean, I don't think Michael Thomas would be a great free agent signing, but I think he would be a more positive addition to the team than any of those DBs at this point, just in terms of his ability to make an impact on them winning or losing.
But like you mentioned with him, you don't even love the idea of him here. Yeah. Originally I was okay, it makes sense because he's played outside, but then even taking outside the injury concerns that he brings over the last few seasons, I was going back and looking at his snaps. He's played a lot more in the slot over the past few years as well. Yes. So, are you getting Roman Wilson on the field as much as you'd like to, if you are bringing in Michael Thomas? I don't know. So even there's a lot of question marks to me.
Yeah, I agree. It's very strange to me that the odds are so good for those DBs, because I really you got 5 starters there, and the one starter who's kind of iffy is whether how much is Cam Sutton going to be suspended, and none of those guys seem to be the answer at that position. That's the one spot where I guess maybe you could do Simmons, or maybe Simmons could move Minkah into the slot, but
yeah,
I don't know. That seems like a little bit yeah, that's a very expensive slot cornerback. You can just go get Shannon Sullivan for league minimum. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's a worthwhile investment. Is it worth it to extend Cam Hayward or restructure TJ Watt and push money into future years so you can have Justin Simmons right now, or so you can have Xavien Howard right now?
It seems like such a luxury.
Right. With so much uncertainty of this team going forward, they have no guys signed long-term at running back, at tight end, at wide receiver, at quarterback. It seems like you're going to want that money more next year than you are going to want to push. it's funny because the narrative about the Dallas Cowboys this offseason has been like, what does all in mean, right? Where like Jerry Jones said that, and now they're remember that. The Steelers are making win now moves, but they are not a team that should be all in on the 2024 season to the point that it's detracting from future years, right? Like you want to do everything you can to win this year, but like I don't think they're at a point where you should be detracting from future years to try to win now. Like when it was the end of Ben Roethlisberger's tenure with the Steelers in 2020 and 2021, sure, push all that money in the future. Who cares? Like that's the time to do it. Right now, this is still a very young team. I don't really see the benefit of pushing money into the future to add depth today. Like it just doesn't seem worth it to me.
I was just going to say, you said about Ben's last, I was just saying, if we still had Ben on the roster, or if we knew for sure that Russ was going to give us top, I don't know, 12 to 15 QB play, go get Justin Simmons if that's what it comes to, just have as many playmakers on the defensive side of the football as you want. But like, I will ask you this too. Do betting odds like bake in injury history? Because like, okay, Dante Jackson has had his fair share of injury history, and then behind him, he got lottery tickets, which I do like, in Corey Trice and Darius Rush. Maybe that is the thought as well, just like assuming that they need something more there, like something more established that is more dependable. Although Xavien Howard has had a ton of injury history recently too, so not.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the idea of adding a veteran backup cornerback. Like I would still put Patrick Peterson on the table, to be honest, as a guy that like could come back. Absolutely. Like I wouldn't consider that like bridge crossed at all. I just don't think that you need to spend what it would take to get one of those guys to get a veteran backup cornerback if you really want one. Like I don't know. That doesn't quite seem, like I said, like it just doesn't seem like an efficient use of resources. How often are you going to be able to get Dante Jackson? You know you want to play Joey Porter Jr. as much as you can. How often are you going to be able to get Dante Jackson and another veteran corner on the field? You're already paying Dante Jackson $6 million, and it's not like that money's just sitting there unaccounted for. Like I said, like you've got to take it from something else to put it to that, and like that to me seems foolish.
I would agree. So I don't know. We'll see if they do anything with this money, but very possible that people are just looking on the surface and seeing what's there now. And like you said, by the time that they kick off this season, that's going to look nothing like what it looks like right now with the cap space that's there.
Yeah, and I made a
even
reference,
if they don't acquire somebody from the outside.
Like I made a reference like it's not like he's sitting on a pile of cash. You know, like it's much more like it's much more like Omar has a $20,000 credit limit and he's only spent $5. Like it's much more applicable to that than it is like money in the bank, right? Where like, yeah, you could spend it, but you certainly don't have to, and it'll still be there for you tomorrow if you don't spend it. It's just as valuable to you in that regard as it is having it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anything else on that regard?
Of those three guys, you said you like Simmons the most. That's like I think he's the best. He's the youngest. I think he's the best player right now.
Best player. I will say the salary probably to me, I would think would be higher than the other two because of the age, and I still think he's playing at a higher level. I mean, Gilmore was still really good last year. Howard's been banged up, that like so many injuries over the last couple of seasons for him, but also because like he is somebody that either he himself could play in the slot or he plays a spot where either Elliott or Minka could be the slot defender as well in the case of Cam Sutton being suspended or, all these other things. So I just think like there is a world, there is a path where I can make the case for them signing Justin Simmons even right now.
Does the weird, like, revenge porn thing with Xavien Howard matter to you at all? Are you familiar with this? That's been going on?
Until you said it, like, no. Like, I mean, I forgot about it to a degree. Like, now you saying that, put that back onto my mind. I don't know. I mean, we have Cam Sutton on the roster. I know it's not the same thing. Like, I don't know. I like keeping it about football. I still think that there's something left in the tank, not a whole lot. He's my number 3 option out of them anyway. So
I think when you're talking about adding like a veteran guy who might not play a lot, like those red flags matter a lot more.
That's fair. Yeah.
Like
Listen, very clearly he was my number 3 choice anyway. So
yeah,
we're just taking him out of the mix. That's fine.
Stephon Gilmore, I think if you can get him for a reasonable amount of money, makes a lot of sense to me. Like you said,
how old is he now? 33.
He's 33.
Yeah.
But like he plays the run well for an outside corner, which to me is like pretty rare. I mean, I think Stephon Gilmore is probably a better player than Dante Jackson right now, don't you?
Yeah, that's why he was still really good last year. The one thing is like his age, but like he looked as good at 32, 33 as he did at 30. Like, so, is he
honestly looked a lot better than he did like in Buffalo at the beginning of his career. Like I would still I'd rather have the guy that the Cowboys had last year than that younger player. I'd be in on Stephon Gilmore. I think he'd be an upgrade. I don't know what you're doing with then $6 million of backup outside cornerback like that. Unless you really think that they can, over the course of a training camp, make Dante Jackson into a slot, then I'm not really sure what the point of that is.
Even like his skills, though, like I understand like the size profile, but he's not a good
Gilmore
tackler.
Play in the slot? I mean, he's a good tackler. Maybe Gilmore can play in the slot. I don't know.
Could. I mean, I'm intrigued by like it's not like I'd be upset if they signed Stephon Gilmore and they started testing that out there. Maybe. Or
I don't know. It's
maybe he plays in the slot when it's like obvious rundowns, and then he's on the outside and Dante Jackson and pass downs.
It seems like an unnecessary amount of depth.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like comparatively to like the wide receiver position, where it's like, I don't know, just make the whole airplane out of cornerbacks. I guess
maybe they could trade Dante Jackson for a receiver like Deontay Johnson or something.
I think
maybe there's a 1-for-1 trade to be made out there.
I think we should leave that conversation right there. That's a good place to leave that.
I mentioned Russell Wilson within there, and I want to turn the conversation to quarterbacks. Surprise, surprise, we're going to talk about quarterbacks for a bit here. The one thing that Kenny, at least from a fan base perspective, me speaking on behalf of the fan base here, the one thing early on in his Steelers tenure that kind of gave us so much hope going into year 2 was his ability in the fourth quarter, like how good he looked down the stretch of games, just like cold-blooded, cerebral, if you will. And it's interesting to look at what he was able to do in the fourth quarter of games and compare that to what we're going to have under center now in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Because while I think we would agree the Steelers have upgraded at that spot, have they upgraded with the play that they're going to get down the stretch of games, at least looking at the sample size that Kenny Pickett had in those moments, as opposed to the guys that are here now?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? Like the one thing that Kenny Pickett was really good at was that like fourth quarter, we call it like fourth quarter Kenny, like it was just, I don't know, it was almost like mystical, like the clock changes and then all of a sudden, what was it, like the Rams game, right? Where it was just like flipped on a dime. Like it was an awful game and then it just turned out great from then on. I feel like there were a couple of them over the years that were like that. And look, I think the goal of the Steelers offense is to not need to come back to win in the fourth quarter so often, right? Like you don't want that's one of those categories where it's like it's great that you can do it, but you don't really want to be leading the league in fourth quarter comebacks. I wrote an article about this. Kenny Pickett was also very good at this at Pitt. He was the career leader all time in Pitt last 2 minutes of the game. Game-winning drives before his senior season. So before he even got good at Pitt, he was already pretty clutch, right? And so I wrote that article after his junior year or redshirt junior year, whatever it was, and somebody commented, was like, yeah, well, Dan Marino beat everybody by 25. So, yes, that is correct. Like, that's the goal of the offense, is to not need those drives, right? It doesn't make you better that you're able to come from behind and win late. It's better than not being able to come from behind and win late. But the best thing is to be so good that you don't need to do that. I don't know if this offense is going to get there or not. I have a lot of question marks. I have question marks about the quarterback play, question marks about the offensive coordinator, question marks about the wide receiver position. And I just think that it's in Mike Tomlin's DNA to try to play games close to the vest. Like, he is not a coach that like goes for the kill shot in the second quarter. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not the way he's wired. I think they're still going to be pretty likely to be playing a lot of close games. And I still think this is going to be an important skill for the Steelers quarterback. They're still going to want to run the ball. They're still going to want to limit the overall number of possessions. Still going to want to keep, dominate the clock, play good defense. Like, teams like that play close games. That's just the way they are. And so, whether you're coming back in the fourth quarter or not, or it's a game-winning drive when you're tied or something like that, even the 4-minute offensive drive when you're winning, I will put that in the same category. It is just as important to be able to run that clock out and win the game as to be able to come from behind. You got to be able to have that. And so I looked at Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and compared them to what Kenny Pickett did last year. And I've got good news and I've got bad news. Russell Wilson was one of the few quarterbacks who was actually better than Kenny Pickett late in games. He had more fourth-quarter comebacks and game-winning drives. He had a passer rating in the fourth quarter of 102.2. Kenny Pickett was only 79-something. So, and his passer rating significantly elevated from general to the fourth quarter. A player that I think is smart, experienced. Like, it seems like that performance was repeatable, that we should expect him to also be very good if the Steelers need him to be late and close. Justin Fields, however, now I didn't scroll through the entire league, but he had to have been among the worst at this in all of football last year. He had just one fourth-quarter comeback game-winning drive, had only 5 over his 3-year career as the Chicago Bears starting quarterback. His career passer rating in the fourth quarter is in the 60s. His career passer rating in the fourth quarter when trailing in the last 4 minutes is 41. 41. That's like the score you get for putting your name on the SATs. Like, that's like the minimum. Like, you have to try really hard to have more that worse than a 41 passer rating. So, look, these things can change. You get people in different systems. You get people in different places. People can mature. People can improve. People can decline. Obviously, Russell Wilson's 35. Not all of his skills are going to be as good as they once were. But I think this paints a pretty clear picture that if you're the Steelers and you're planning or expecting to be playing a lot of close games, I think this could be a pretty significant tiebreaker for Russell Wilson over Justin Fields in the quarterback battle.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. You just brought that up to me right before we started recording because I didn't know that. The things about Russell Wilson that I was taking away in a positive manner were everything that he's done in the red zone, or he did last year in the red zone. Pretty much still like top 5 across the board in terms of red zone efficiency, really good at the intermediate as well. Short area and deep was where the EPA had a huge drop off. But yeah, like knowing that, I would say that is maybe something to monitor. Like that was not data that was in my mind in terms of let's go into this training camp and just have a QB battle and see how it shakes out. I still think that it's going to be, but that's definitely an interesting nugget to keep in the back of your mind.
I wonder if this is something that is even possible to measure in a training camp and preseason environment. Like, how would you know if Justin Fields had gotten better?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean,
look, it's really hard. I don't like that. That's the thing. It's like, it's almost like so much of this is going to depend on how they look in training camp and in the preseason, I think. But this feels like something where, honestly, like, we kind of already know everything we're going to know because there is no analog to doing that. You can create it in practice. You can, the Steelers do end their practices with 2-minute drills all the time, where the ones will go against the ones and the twos will go against the twos, and there'll be the offense gets the ball at the 20 and they have a minute 30 and a one timeout or whatever, and whatever the scenario is, and they practice it. But I don't know how much weight you can give to this kind of thing. Like, so much of what we're talking about is the ability to be like cool under pressure and like not lose your head when the game is on the line. I don't know how you can replicate that without the game being on the line. Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like something you can really accomplish.
That is true. Yeah. So when I said that, I didn't necessarily mean for like the team keeping in mind for the battle. I think just for me as a fan, like keeping that nugget of information in the back of my mind. But I don't know how you replicate that in that setting. Like, other than just seeing it actually play out in the game? Like, are we going to see when they do like 7 shots, this really come to the forefront all of a sudden, and Justin Fields is going to be awful in 7 shots for whatever reason?
Yeah, I highly doubt
Right.
it. You know, so I don't know. It's interesting. I'm just not sure how much we can I think you said it best. It's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Just like the contract stuff. Like, we're not like, the fact that Justin Fields is younger and would be a better player going forward for the team, likely, if he's able to be better. Like, to me, it's one of these tiebreakers, right? Where like a tiebreaker in Fields' favor is that he's younger and is a more viable long-term option at this point if he does happen to win it and succeed. The tiebreaker for Wilson is the Steelers absolutely have to hit the ground running on offense and can't play around because they need to stack wins in September, and they can't afford to let somebody warm up to the task. And I think this should be another tiebreaker for Wilson in terms of just the fact that he's done it before, and I don't see a whole lot of ways that we can really measure it between now and the start of the season.
Yeah. I'm looking at I had like a heat map pulled up because I was trying to look for some information here. And it's interesting because Russ, the only area that he was like elite, literally the best in the NFL in, he is the number 1 EPA intermediate left, 33.5 EPA, a 70% success rate, which is that like Cortland Sutton always lines up on the left side of the field. So I'll be interested to see, like, is George, not exclusively, but how much is he going to line up on the left side of the field? Like, is that something that they're going to pay attention to?
I don't know. It's interesting. I think they're going to try to move George around a lot especially if they don't get, if they don't get any help for George and they leave him in the same spot all the time, like, well, this is a good segue to the next thing on here, because that's going to be a very frustrated George Pickens if that's what they do. If he gets no help and they leave him in the same spot every down, man, like you could not make George Pickens any easier to defend than that.
Yeah. Hey, it's just going to be a jump. Like, we're just expecting you to win this jump ball every single time. We know you're going to be double or triple covered, but you got to come down with it. Yeah, Hayden Bishop, who I mentioned, had a question for us. He's had a lot of questions for us lately. We appreciate that. Hayden asked us a question, but actually first I got to give a shout out, because I was going through the YouTube comments to find this question. And Alan, if people follow me on Twitter, they've already seen this comment, but it was hilarious. We've been talking about Arthur Smith's offense and the way that maybe the fantasy football community looks at Arthur Smith's offense as opposed to everybody else, and the narrative that gets spun because of the fantasy football community. At Frazier Fan MSU had a take about fantasy sports. Playing fantasy sports is a lot like rubbing one out. It don't bother no one that you do it, but no one wants to hear about it or cares how it went for you. Amazing.
I love that so much. It's so good. It's so
I was mentioning, listen, we love everybody that is a part of the Steelers Afternoon Drive community. But if you are part of the comments, you obviously see the type of comments that we get quite a bit when people disagree with us, which is fine. But that is why I absolutely love when we get one like this. Just so lighthearted, hilarious. I immediately saw it. I got the notification when it popped up, and I was just like, yeah, the world has to see this. Not everybody's going to look at these comments. A lot more people might see it if I post it on my Twitter account. So we appreciate that. And keep that type of humor coming in the comments, by the way. This only got 4 likes on it. Not sure how that happened. Go throw a like on Frazier Fan MSU's comment from a couple days ago. Anyway, we appreciate that. Hayden Bishop's question, though. I agree that as fans, we don't care who scores the touchdowns, but do you think some of the skill players would care? I can't imagine Pickens being happy if Austin has as many touchdowns as him.
That's interesting. I think the skill position players are just going to be so happy to be in like an offense that makes sense. There won't be a lot of that this year. It's sort of like, like if you're driving a 2008 Honda Civic, like that doesn't sound great unless you're just coming from a 1992 Ford Tempo. Right? Then it sounds awesome, right? So I think it's all about perspective. I think you can count on the Steelers skill position players being very happy with Arthur Smith this year, almost no matter what, just because he almost has to be better than Canada was in terms of just things making sense, scheming guys open, and pieces fitting together. Now, Are there going to be guys that are frustrated? Like I almost expect George Pickens to be frustrated this year because the way defenses are going to try to take him away, and I don't really think that there's anything that Arthur Smith has in his repertoire right now to be able to stop them from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But do I think he would be frustrated by having, like, if he has 5 touchdowns again and Calvin Austin also has 5, you think he's going to be upset by that? No, I don't buy it. No, I don't think so. I don't think that is one of the things that is going to get him riled up, especially if he goes on and has like 1,800 yards, which I think is certainly within the realm of possibility. So, yeah, I don't expect so. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really. I maybe the running backs a little bit. I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't know who it would be that would be upset by that. You have to have a track record of having done it in the NFL to be upset about your coordinator not letting you do it. And the Steelers just don't have any of those guys.
I can't see it with the running backs, can't see it with Pat, and I can't see it with any receiver besides George potentially. I just think that we're like, with where we're at in the process right now, it's just too hard to say. Like, we obviously saw the stuff happen with George last year, but to your point, that wasn't, to me, I don't know that any of those frustrations were due to production so much as just the situation within the offense for everybody. Like, I just think it was a frustrating season for everybody that played on the offensive side of the ball. So, going with what they're into now, I think as long as they see like, oh, this is a legit NFL offense, we see the purpose behind things that we're doing, we see the meaning behind all of this. At least on the surface right now, I don't envision that happening. Now, in game, I could certainly see the frustrations like you're talking about with the extra attention he's going to draw. If, he's not getting any free looks because of that, if they're able to take him away a game or two, and people weren't taking attention away from him, I think that we could see that frustration develop in a game. But I just think, like, big picture, I don't really see it right now.
The Steelers had 13 passing touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
Like, they could very reasonably double that number. Like, if that happens, I don't think anyone's going to be able to complain about the way they're distributed.
If their quarterbacks didn't play with their dominant hand, I think they would replicate those numbers. No, I want to ask you something that I saw on Twitter today because I thought it was funny. We kind of talked about this, honestly, with the way that the ball is spread around. Alex Kozora said one of his bold predictions is that a tackle catches a touchdown this year. What do you think about that?
I'm very upset that, like, Matt Canada in college had all those crazy plays that we saw. I remember Brian O'Neill was a phenom at Pitt, won the Heisman Trophy. Rest in peace. It's no more because SB Nation sucks. But and then we never got to see any of that in the NFL, or very little of it. And when we did, it was like in the world's least consequential moments, like Chase Claypool's left-handed touchdown pass to Derek Watt mid blowout. Like, what? Like,
yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just didn't see that kind of stuff work out for them that way. I'm all for it. I'm all for big guy touchdowns. I think it's one of the best things in football. Mm-hmm. I think, the Steelers have a couple of young athletes at the position of tackle. Like Troy Fautanu looks like a guy that could run and score. Broderick Jones is a load. I don't know. I think if you're going to do it, but
even Dylan Cook.
Dude, Dylan Cook would be really good at it.
That might be my pick.
I want Dylan Cook to, like, take a tackle end around and then throw a touchdown. Dylan Cook, if you're not aware, was a college quarterback before moving to tackle, which has to be the only person in the history of the universe that can say that. Played quarterback at NAIA Montana State Northern? Yeah, Montana State Northern.
Okay.
Sidebar, Montana State Northern's nickname. No, not Montana State Northern. Oh, maybe it is. Which one? Is it just Montana Northern? I don't know.
I knew it was Montana. That was it.
Montana State Northern, yes. Okay. Their team's nickname. Could you give it a guess?
I thought I saw a picture of it, unless it was. So did he go to multiple schools? Because I know it was the Grizzlies.
Yes.
Was the name
So
of one.
he was a quarterback at Montana State Northern, and then he transferred to Montana, which is an FCS school, which is the Grizzlies. Okay. But he started at Montana State Northern, where he was there for 2 years. They are the Lights, the Montana State Northern Lights.
What? Yeah. If you would have gave me 100 guesses,
right?
No.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's Northern Lights. Like that's awesome. I like that a lot.
I do too. Yeah, my prediction: Connor Hayward is going to throw that touchdown to Dylan Cook this year.
I'm thinking Dylan Cook throws it. That'd be awesome. How about like because he could legitimately be on the field goal squad. How about like a fake field goal to Dylan Cook? Right?
Like Al Villanueva style?
Yeah.
The Boswell of Villanueva? Okay.
Yeah.
In Denver.
Yeah. I could really see that. Like, okay, I'm not expecting him to throw a touchdown. That could legitimately happen.
Yeah. Especially like Danny Smith is going to be in his bag this year because of the new kickoff returns and stuff. Like this is just going into now he's just gonna this is opening up a whole new world for him. So the creativity is just going to continue to flow over even to field goal situations, and we get Dylan Cook a touchdown. I like it. There we go. Let us know what you think. Do you guys have any weird scenarios that are going to result in a Steelers touchdown this year? Let us know in the comments about that.
If the Steelers can't trade for a wide receiver, what should they do with their money? Let us know. What should they save it? Should they save it for an in-season move? Should they spend it on absurd amounts of cornerback depth? Is there somewhere else that we didn't talk about that you would like them to spend that money?
Just sign all three.
Sign everyone.
There we go.
Tom Brady's available.
There, he just coming off the white party at who's the guy from Fanatics? Michael something.
Yeah.
Dang it. Whatever that guy's name is. Host that party every year. But yeah, Tom Brady was there. So hey, still throwing the pigskin around. He's out.
Michael Rubin is the
Michael Rubin. That's it. There it is.
Livy
I'll
Dunn
tell people they can find you.
Pittsburgh. Oh. I don't know if Sierra was or not. Maybe there's going to be battle for primacy amongst Pittsburgh.
So Livy was there, but Paul Steen's locked in right now. I mean, we're in season.
Well,
it's literally starting tonight.
He's busy. Although, the starting pitcher who's pitching the next night might be the least busy person in the entire ballpark for a Pirate game.
That is true.
If he wasn't there, I'm not sure anyone would have noticed.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, but interesting stuff. We'll see how it all plays out. Of course, we want your thoughts in the comments as well. Not necessarily on the Michael Rubin's white party, but everything else that we discussed. Alan, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Use the promo code Alan10 to get $10 off an annual subscription to SN Plus. Good stuff for myself, Derek Bell, and the rest of the team there. And check us out on TikTok, Steelers Afternoon Drive.
There we go. As I said, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell here, as well as hitting us in the comments. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. You can find Steelers Afternoon Drive over there. Find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, as Alan mentioned. Also, get at us on TikTok at Steelers Afternoon Drive. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.